Alrighty, so we should be recording. So just a quick little FYI, this speaker series aims to empower our peers and the Northern New Mexico College community and the entire Northern New Mexico community as a whole for success in the workplace by giving you all the knowledge and the resources needed to be well prepared for employment. And before I introduce our wonderful speaker, I'd just like to go over a couple of Zoom rules with you all, which I'm sure you're already fully aware of. So one, please stay muted while our speaker is presenting to avoid any background noises. And if participation is encouraged throughout the presentation, then go ahead. That would be the time to unmute yourself, engage in conversation, and then mute yourself again. Also, you will have an opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the presentation. So once that time comes, please feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand, or type it in the chat. And finally, Student Senate will be doing a raffle for a $50 Amazon gift card for those who, one, attend this event, and two, fill out our feedback survey, which will be provided at the end. And also, I just want to let everyone know we have our wonderful Arden Colston here with us, who will be doing sign language interpretation. So for those that would like, you could pin him by going onto the three little dots on the upper right-hand corner and click pin, and that way you get to see him and only him. So without further ado, it is with great honor and a great privilege to announce our speaker for today, which is our very own President, Dr. Bailey, and I welcome a virtual round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to everyone who's here. I am honored to be here, very much honored to be here to be the inaugural speaker for the Fly Like an Eagle speaker series. I am going to share my screen. So as Madam President said, please pin Arden so that you can have access to the sign language. And I'm going to share my screen, if I may.
Okay.
And hopefully everyone can see that. So I am here to speak about leadership, and I do want to say, and I'd like to start by saying a special thanks. I think that our student leaders, I've said this publicly before, but this is an unbelievably talented group of student leaders. So to our Student Senate, for their vision, for their passion, for their classmates, for their service to our community and our college, I want to say a special thanks. And I think this is dedicated to you and to your vision for each other and the vision for the school. So I have been asked and tasked to talk about leadership. So there's a couple of things I'd like to say on this first, and this is really the overview. I am not going to speak for an hour because I want there to be time for questions and answers. But I want to start with a disclaimer. Here are the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to try to define leadership, and then I'm going to share some core principles and some lessons learned. I had the privilege of serving in the United States Air Force for a little over 24 years before I took this job. But I will tell you that I have grown as a leader in the almost 5 years that I have been here at the college than I did in all of my time in the Air Force. And that's saying a lot, because in the Air Force, that's all you do is practice leadership. And but this job has really been a gift that way. The big disclaimer I want to point out is that anyone who tells you that they are a perfect leader or that they have all the answers is absolutely full of nonsense. I'm going to watch to see how Arden does a sign language on that. I was going to use a worse word. There is no blueprint for perfect leadership. And so my disclaimer is that this is me sharing some lessons that I've learned in this job, some principles that I think have served us well and served the college well over the last several years. But I also want to point out that all leaders, if they take their position seriously, are still learning. A college is a perfect example of this. Leadership does not work in a vacuum. It works within a very highly complex environment. And in the case of a college, a very dynamic environment. So we're going to talk about that. So this is not a blueprint by any means. It's really just my way of sharing some of the insights that I've learned, and they are for you to take with your own discretion and for you to apply your own lens to anything that I say here. Okay, defining leadership. I am going to, let's see if I can do this. Hopefully some of you know the gentleman in the picture on the left. That is Dwight Eisenhower, former United States president and former Supreme Allied Commander for forces in Europe in World War II. Now, I'm going to qualify it again. This is a definition of leadership that I really like. I think that it could use a gender neutrality, so we'll have to give him a pass because he probably defined this in the 1940s or 50s. But this is the way Eisenhower defined leadership: the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. Again, we can advance that in gender neutral ways that I think are more important and current for us. Here's the key to me for that definition. This last part. Wanting to do it. I think this is the most important part of Eisenhower's definition of leadership. And let me paraphrase this definition to be used in today's environment. I think that leadership is the art of inspiring teams and members within the team to do things and to take efforts that help the team because they want to help the team. Right? And it's that last part that's really important. We're going to talk about inspiration and why that's important. Leadership is not barking orders. It's not. It's inspiring members of the team to want to help the team. And when you have an entire team motivated like that, then there is no obstacle you can't overcome. And I think Northern is living proof of that. Here are 4 of my core principles. As I said, I think a lot of this is personal, and so you can kind of accept or reject this at your own discretion. But there is one exception that I think this core principle applies to all leaders, no matter who they serve, and no matter in what environment they serve. I think there is one core principle that applies to all leaders, and it's always the most important. If there's nothing else that you take away from this session, I'm begging you, this is the one thing I want you to take away, and that is integrity is the cornerstone for everything. Everything revolving around leadership has to do with integrity. Let me give you an example of this. And I'm going to use our Madam President as an example. If Evelyn asks me a question, a position on something, background information, why I made a certain decision, if integrity isn't my core principle, and if she doesn't not just feel, but if she doesn't know that when I give her an answer that I'm telling the truth, then nothing else matters. No other part of my leadership matters if she can't trust me. Now, here's the other thing. As a leader, should I expect that just because of my leadership position, Evelyn should trust me? No, I have to earn that for sure. I have to earn that trust over time. So it doesn't happen overnight. But integrity is one of those things that always has to be at the center. If that breaks down, then all leadership authority, I think, is lost. Here's how serious I take this. And it's why I'm spending so much time on it. And I don't know that I've really shared this with many people. I'm coming to you today from the president's house in El Rito. And it's a beautiful place. Of all the places that my wife and I have lived in our lives in 50 years, this is the most, this is her favorite house of anywhere we've ever lived. Me too. And this is my dream job. It is. I know that this is a blessing to be here, and it is far better and far more rewarding and far bigger of a blessing than I could have possibly imagined. But there is a box in this house that we have never unpacked, and which probably means that someday it's going whatever's in there is going to Goodwill, because we haven't needed to use any of that stuff for 5 years. But it has become a symbol. And it's a pledge that I made to myself that as much as I love this job, if I am ever put in a position where in order to keep this job, I have to sacrifice my integrity to do it, that will be the first box that's already packed. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I do that on purpose, because you should never have to sacrifice your integrity for any position, ever. So Sarah's going to help me on this. The last several months, the things that have happened in Washington, the things that the entire world has watched, a lot of that can be attributed to what happens when leaders don't exhibit integrity. And by the way, this is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. This is a leadership issue. Integrity has to be the cornerstone of everything that the leader does. And by the way, all it takes is one slip to make that entire house crumble. So it has to be constant. That box has to stay packed and ready. So I hope I have made enough of a foot stomp with you on this, but that's how important this is. The second one is transparency. And I have a really good recent example of this. By transparency, I mean that leaders at their best share what they're thinking, share what they're feeling, welcome other ideas. The reason that transparency is so important is because none of us are perfect, right? All leaders are flawed. All leaders are flawed. And we don't have all the answers. But if we try to act like we have all the answers, or we hide the fact that we don't have all the answers, then we lose our credibility as leaders. And when you show that transparency, and when you really, even when you're willing to show your vulnerability as a leader, then the team can rally. A great example of this, a recent example of this, has to do with vaccinations for COVID. And a lot of you watch, and God bless you for doing this, but a lot of you watch my periodic updates, my video updates for the college and for the community. Hey, here's some decisions that we're working on. And with vaccinations, I confessed in one of those videos that I don't have all the answers. This is something I brought up with the Student Senate recently. I don't have all the answers on the vaccine. And I also shared in a very transparent way, here's my personal feeling about it. I think everyone should have it, right? Let me just be clear about that. And part of that has to do with my background and the fact that in the military, we didn't have any decisions on this. And if this is what you have to do to keep everyone safe, everyone just did it. Well, college is different, right? College isn't a military organization. And I had to share that with everybody. And so in showing that vulnerability and showing that transparency, well, then there was the team said, well, let's all come together and figure this out as a team. And so now we have a committee that likely will be meeting as early as next week to start to talk about, well, how much should the college encourage vaccination, and what happens if only 70% of our students and faculty and staff want to get it, and how do we safely open? What are the transmissibility rates based on it? There's all kinds of things that we're gonna work on together, but it's transparency that led to this team effort. And I think the more you do that, the better. I'll also share a little story, and I'm going to make sure I'm keeping good on time here. That has to do with our local hometown newspaper, the Rio Grande Sun, and really in many ways that is a mirror that's held up to the community as about how the college is perceived in our community. Before taking this job, before moving to New Mexico, I went online and looked at the Rio Grande Sun, and I looked at all the kind of online issues for the previous year. And let me just say, without going into detail, there are a lot of negative stories in that newspaper about the college. And by the way, this is not a poke in the eye on the Rio Grande Sun. I'm sure we earned some of those things. And by the way, that's not an indictment on anyone who came before me, but the college had some challenges. And so, and it appeared in a lot of those stories that the college had really been trying to hold hold back and trying to keep a lot of that secret. Well, to the younger members of our audience, you've grown up in an environment where that's so much harder to do now. And I think younger generations are far more comfortable in a transparent world. But for older generations like ours, sometimes that's hard. My very first week in this job, I went and sat down with Mr. Trapp, who's the editor and publisher of the newspaper. And I told him, and by the way, he told me it was the very first time that a president had come into his office and sit down with him. But I told him in that meeting that I made a pledge. I said, I'll never lie to you, and I'll never try to hide anything from you. And I confessed to him, like I just confessed to you, as leaders, I told him, I know I'm going to make some great decisions as the president. I know it, but I know that I will likely make some bonehead ones too. And, but I'll own them, and we will own them as a college. And I think, to his credit, I think he respects that. And the decisions that we've made over the last several years, if I've made a bad call, they have called me out on it, and I deserved it, but at least I've owned it. And then we've moved on from it. We hit a milestone about a year, and some of you who have been around a while probably remember this. About a year into the term here, into my tenure, and we had been checking the paper. Obviously, we read the paper every week when it comes out. Well, we hit a turning point. About a year after arriving, we hit a turning point where there was a weekly paper where there were more good news stories about the college than bad news stories. And for those who read the Rio Grande Sun, that was a point of no return. We never went back after that. Like every week now, if you pick up the paper over the last several years, it's all about Evelyn and the Arches program. It's about the Davis Scholars. It's about the solar array. It's about all these great things. By the way, these were also great things that were happening at the college before I got here, right? The college was doing amazing things before I got here. So it wasn't me that did it. It was about transparency and the fact that we were open and sharing everything. Well, now that the scandals aren't sensationalized, those are just part of the story. So I think it's incumbent upon leaders to be as transparent as possible. Third is vision. And again, for those who have been around a long time and know some of the challenges that we had, I have to confess that it helps that I am very much a half glass full kind of person. I do tend to see the world through rose-colored glasses, and I tend to see potential, and I tend to be generally super optimistic about everything, and that can help, especially if you are leading an organization that has some scars and that has some challenges. That optimism and the desire for a vision really leads to leaders saying, here's where we can be. If we all want to, this is what we can get to. In the fall of 2016, we got together as a college, and we decided that we needed to define that vision, right? And to build a strategic direction for the institution. So it wasn't me gathering 5 or 6 people in a cigar-filled room and coming up with a strategic direction. It was us inviting everybody. And over the course of several workshops, we had everyone from faculty, staff, community members. We had, and still do, have custodial staff who have been around for 30 years. They had a voice, and if we're not asking them about what they think is possible and where we can go, then we knew we were missing out. So this was a huge tent to invite everyone in. But at the end of that, we were able to articulate a vision. We said, here's where we are in 2016, 2017, and here's the vision for 2022. We can see it. This is where we want to be. And it's great now because 4.5 years later, we're looking at what we dreamt of in 2022, and we've actually marched down the field in a lot of ways toward that vision, which is incredible. The last thing I'll say about this is that leaders need to be prognosticators. Leaders need to, at their best, leaders need to look well in advance and make decisions now, knowing that the effects of those decisions may not be realized for quite a long time. And if you want, we can talk about the automotive program in Q&A, but that's another example of that. The last thing I want to say about this is inspiration, last core principle. And this gets to Eisenhower's definition about inspiring people to want to do things for the team and help the team move forward. Part of that has to do, I think, with leaders connecting group goals, team goals with individual goals. Again, I'm gonna pick on Madam President because it's her show. So a good example of this is that I know what Evelyn dreams about. Like, I know what she wants to do. And as the Student Senate president, there are a lot of things that she does and the rest of the Student Senate does that are incredibly important to help the college move forward as a team. But if in that relationship, as the leader of the college, if there are things that I can do in the course of normal day-to-day operations that help Evelyn, as she's leading the Student Senate, actually do her part to help the college, and in turn, there are opportunities along the way, knowing what her goals are, her personal professional goals, if I can join that somehow with the team goals, well, now there's a synergy that we develop in that. And now if you have every member of the team working and pulling an oar for the team, but knowing that that team is also very thoughtful and respectful about what each team member's individual goals are, well, then you can move mountains. You can move mountains because you have tied those things together. Okay. Lessons learned so far. These are just some very specific college things that in reflecting back on my tenure at the college have in many ways, I think, served me well. I think they've served the college well. The first has to do with heart-centered leadership. Similar to what I shared with you about that unopened box in my house and not sacrificing integrity. I also made a pledge to myself the day before I got here. I was actually driving across country to get here when I made this pledge, especially knowing that the college had some challenges, that there were relationships that needed to be healed. I made a pledge, and the pledge was this. I made a pledge that I would never make a decision as president of Northern that was based on anger or revenge or retaliation or jealousy or none of it. That I would never make a decision based on a negative emotion. And I am super proud of the fact that 4.5 years later, I have held true to that, completely held true to that. And the reason for that is because I knew this was an institution that needed to heal. And the worst thing that could happen is a president who wasn't making heart-centered decisions. And I made that pledge to myself. I made that oath in the heat of the moment and kind of thinking about what the college needed. But 4.5 years later, I think that should be true for all leaders. Doesn't matter what organization you're leading. I think that is a pledge that every leader should make. And by the way, this is a perfect moment to say, everyone who is listening to this right now, you are a leader. Everyone who's participating in this meeting is a leader. There are people right now who look to you as a role model, who look to you as a leader of a team in any way. I think all of these things apply to you. The only difference is the scope, right? As you move forward and you become leaders of larger and larger organizations, it just means the scope is bigger. But the principles can remain the same. The second one is collaboration. I believe, and I should coin this term, I believe there is an irony to power. I believe there is an irony to power. And the irony is that power is most effective when it is shared, right? That might not seem logical if you look at it black and white. But I truly believe, and I think we've proven at Northern, that power is most effective when it is shared. And there is a beautiful irony to that. That has led us to sharing governance discussions. That's led us to the big open tent strategic direction. Collaboration is the key. It's led us to partnerships with other colleges and universities who otherwise we may call our rivals. And let me also say this, there needs to be a humility. This is where collaboration and humility fit in. There has to be a humility within the leadership. And because at the end of the day, all of the things that we have enjoyed at Northern, I mean, Northern is in so many ways the darling of the state. It really is. And it's hard for me even to articulate it. But we have beautiful relationships with our governor. We have great relationships with our legislature. We have great relationships with our community. We're getting national attention for some of the things we're doing. And so it's all wonderful. But is all of that because of me? No. And I'm not just saying that to try and overly sound humble. It's the reason why we are successful as a college is because students are achieving and doing well. It's because faculty and staff are teaming up in incredible ways. And it's all of you that are doing the stuff. You're the ones who are actually moving the train forward. It's just, I just happen to be on it and a very small part of that train. So there needs to be a humility in leadership to understand that it's not the leader that's moving the train. It's just the leader that's on board and helping sometimes to articulate the vision. But it's everybody else that's helping that team to move forward, and that always has to be at the forefront of a leader's position. Third is risk and reward, and this is really we can talk more about this in Q&A if you like, but this is a delicate one. I tend to, and maybe because of where I come from, in the military, I had to make decisions, as you may have guessed, where the stakes were incredibly high. Life or death type decisions. Now, do we have to make similar decisions like that at the college every day? No. I will say this, COVID has made it closer to that than ever. But in general, the stakes aren't as high in day-to-day operations at the college. I think that any organization benefits by having some level of risk tolerance. I don't think we should be afraid of risk, because I think sometimes it is the collection of calculated risks that can lead to huge rewards. Right? This solar array that sits 300 yards from me was a huge risk. The mill levy, the partnership with the public schools, the reinvigoration of the campus, the trades, all of those were huge risks. And I'm not advocating that leaders be reckless. Let me make that very clear. But I do think that calculated risks and challenging the organization to move forward can yield incredible rewards. The last thing I'll say about this is leaders should be willing to accept the risk for the team. So I have said publicly a lot when talking to faculty and staff, hey, if you are thinking outside the box and you have an idea that can help us move forward or bring new students in or help students get to the finish line, and even if it sounds a little bit strange, if you've done your homework and you think that's something that's worth trying, then let's try it. And if it succeeds, then you are the one who will get all the credit, and we will sing songs about you, and we will celebrate your name in the newspaper and all of that. But if it fails, but we know that your heart was in it, then I, as the leader, will take a responsibility for it. Right? If you can build that kind of a relationship between the team and the leader, then team members can be more comfortable in taking risks. And I do, in my heart, I do know that can move teams forward. The last thing I will say, and it likely is the simplest, has to do with servant leadership. And this is a concept that, and even though I know a lot of you talk and refer to me as Dr. Bailey, why I keep saying, hey, please call me Rick, it's really because although the Board of Regents that member, and by the way, they're going to hear this, so they may not be super happy about what I'm about to say. The Board of Regents can hire and fire. They can fire me today. They have that authority because they work directly for the governor, and I serve at the pleasure of the board. But I don't work for the board. I don't work for the board. I work for the students. I work for the faculty. I work for the staff. I work for the community. Those are my bosses. The Board of Regents is who I report to. And I think that's a really important distinction, right? I wake up every day, and I'm not just saying this, I wake up every day and think about what I can do to make the lives better for students, faculty, staff, and community in Northern New Mexico every day. Because ultimately that's who I know I work for. And I think servant leadership has to be one of those other things that's just built in to the heart-centered part of this equation. And I think if servant leadership is the North Star for the way you lead and the way you make decisions, then I think those teams are set up for success. Okay, so that is, in a very, very quick nutshell, my thoughts on leadership, and I am super grateful that you've taken the time to listen to my ramblings and my thoughts on the matter. I'm gonna stop share, and I am happy to open it up for questions, thoughts, comments. And by the way, there is nothing off limit. Nothing off limit. So I have to exercise transparency with you. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks, everybody.
So I'm happy to start us off with the first question. This is super inspiring. So Dr. Bailey, what would you say to the people who think that they can't be leaders because they are, too nice or too soft or, not assertive or aggressive enough? Because I've had several people come up to me and ask that. And so what would you tell them?
So that is such a good question, Madam President. I had a lot of people said that about me. A lot of people probably still say that about me. So, after 24 years of the military, I never yelled at anybody. That's not, I like to think that you can ask everyone at the college. I've never yelled at anyone. That's not who I am. It's not my personality. It's not my style. There is a difference between being nice and treating people with respect and being heart-centered in your leadership. There's a difference between that and some creating some facade where you have to be a tough as nails, nail chewing leader. I don't think, what I think is as long as you are true to who you are, I think all of you are leaders. I mean, I know all of you are leaders now. But I think that because you lead with your heart and your mind, it doesn't mean that you can't be the president of the U.S. or any other country. There's no limit to that. I think now, have I made decisions that people were not happy with? Absolutely. And so, there is nice and being respectful, but you also oftentimes in leadership, you have to make decisions where not everyone will be happy. There is a reality to that. A perfect example, and I'll share one that was very personal for me. When the college, when we all went into this online environment in March, we were in a really tough budget spot, and we had to kind of move along without a bookstore, without a cafeteria, without all these other things. And there were people for several months, because we didn't have to make this decision until the summer, but there were people that I ended up having to make a decision to lay off. that's awful. And it came down to two things. It was lay some people off who we could not bring to the campus and work, or give everyone a pay cut. Like, those were the two choices. There is a really interesting documentary. Sorry for the long answer, Evelyn. There was a documentary about presidential chiefs of staff, the people who are the gatekeepers for the president here in the U.S. And they said, the president doesn't have to make hard decisions. The president has to make impossible decisions, because there are decisions that our faculty and staff can make, and they should make. By the time a decision gets to my desk, typically it's a decision where there are no right answers, and there are no easy answers, because otherwise they would have been made before. And so now you're just choosing between all these different variables and trying to use your heart to make the best decision you can. So, long answer, you can still be a nice person and make hard decisions. That's what leadership is. But as long as you are true to who you are and you have a love and respect for everybody, then that will guide you in those tough decisions. And then there's no limit to that. So anyone who tells you that you're too nice to be a leader is I have to be careful what I say, is not giving you great advice. I'll put it that way.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. Dr. Apiarius, you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much. That was really, really rich information. I thoroughly enjoyed that and now have 4 pages of notes. But I'm gonna, as is my tendency, gonna ask you a 2-part question.
Okay.
One is, I've had, and I won't name names, the misfortune to serve under some leaders that were leaders more name only. And I go back to your point where you said, and I truly believed it up until my first vice presidency, where moral integrity means everything, or should mean everything for a leader. And yet I found consistently at some of the highest levels of university leadership where they were amoral, if not actually immoral. My first president I served under in a leadership capacity as senior management, the guy even had a PhD in divinity and was one of the most immoral human beings I've ever met. Now, and again, not to get political, but I think we've also seen in the highest levels of leadership in the United States, sometimes a lack of moral integrity at the highest levels, and the fallout that comes with that. So my first question is, how does that happen? How do kind of bad people end up in great places? Because I don't get that. I still can't fathom how that happens.
Yeah, good question, Don. So I don't know. Let me start with that. I don't know how that happens. But let me offer a ray of hope, and that is, with what we saw in Washington recently over the last couple of months. I think younger generations, I think their tolerance for that kind of behavior is waning. I think the next generation of leaders is going to be far more heart-centered and far more willing to address the problems that are staring us right in the face, but that forever we've somehow kicked to the curb and have blanketed over. Let me add to that a little bit. There's a difference between integrity and perfection, a big difference, right? And what I mean by that is that I don't consider myself better than anyone. I really don't. I am, and for those of you who know me and really know me, you know that I am an incredibly flawed individual. I think the difference is leaders need to recognize their own inherent humanity, and by that I mean our own fallibility, and accept that we are imperfect, and then own it. And I think even that little simple act of faith can take leaders to the next level. So it's not about being better. It's really just about trying to do the right thing, right? We try to do the best we can. I think the relics that you speak about, and the legacy of those who maybe, stabbed other people in the back on the way to get to where they got. I think those days are numbered. And I think because I think younger generations are going to have far less willingness to deal with it. And the other issue is that we are living in an information superhighway where you can't hide that stuff anymore, and your true nature is revealed, I think, in a lot more sharper relief than maybe it had been done in the past. So I think that actually bodes well for the future of leadership. That's the glass half full answer, Don.
Fair enough. And I'll bow wave if someone else has a question, but I have a follow-up that you just touched on. Does anybody else want to jump in? I don't want to hog the time. Okay, I'll fire. So you said transparency, and you also said inspirational, and I get the transparency piece. The inspirational kind of has me confused if it means anything outside of the framework that you used for Eisenhower, because I see a lot of leaders kind of use that hyperbolically, where it's kind of like a catchphrase. I want to be inspirational. And for me, inspiration has a lot of hard work that goes behind it. And I want you to talk about that for a moment, if you can, because I think a lot of people define inspiration differently or inspirational differently. And I'd like you to drill down a little bit more on that, if you would.
Yeah, that's so great. Great question. And again, I am answering it to the best of my ability, but I'm sure it is lacking in a lot of ways. So I can only give you my take on it. There's a practicality to it, and there is an intangible, almost magical quality to it. So there are strategies, right? There are some things that you should not to do this in a way that is where you're purposely trying to engineer it. I don't want to make it sound like it is two-dimensional. Remember I talked about how if you can find ways for the team goals and individual goals to be connected, right? Some of that builds on itself, right? And again, I want to be careful because I don't want to share too much of Evelyn's story, but if I know where I think she's headed, and I know the people that she needs to meet in order for her to get there, and the work that we're doing at the college and the Senate actually helps to lay some of those foundations down that help her, well, now everyone's winning. Everyone's, including the organization, right? So there is the connection between team and individual goals. There's also, this also ties to vision. Northern today has the strongest enrollment it's had since 2014, right? And a lot of that is, we know some of that's based on some strategic decisions we made and some other things, but there is something about, every other college around us really struggling, and somehow we are managing to do well. And we're the oasis right now, that way. So there is also something that once you articulate a vision and once you say this, I know we can get here. For those who were with me in 2016, I kept saying it over and over. I know we can get there. I know our best days are ahead of us. I know it. And I really did believe it. And it's easier now because we are in a better place, right? But there was something about the confidence and the optimism to say, I know that we have all the tools we need to get there. And having that kind of conviction, I think I think that's powerful. And I think teams can be motivated that way. And when you have teams that believe in themselves, then you can move. And here's the other thing: you also celebrate the successes along the way, right? It is hard not to top success as a motivator. When we do well, that is it feeds the fire that moves the team forward too. And so I think you have to capitalize and recognize and give recognition to the team for the work that they do. Long answer, Don, I'm sorry, but that's kind of my thought on inspiration.
Great answer. Thank you.
I believe Bruno is next. And then after Bruno, we have a question from Victor as well.
Okay.
Oh, good. Oh my God. It's good afternoon, everyone. For me, it's a good afternoon. Great speech, Dr. Bailey. Thank you for this amazing inspiration speech. I have a more practical question for you. I want to know like how you separate your work from your personal life, because as leaders, maybe we can take home our work, but it's not good for our mental health. We need to relax sometimes. And then I know right now you cannot take your home. No, you cannot take your work out of your home because you're working at home. But like when we are at college, like normal in our normal life, how can you do that? Like how can you manage it?
That is such a good question, Bruno. I have to, this goes back to transparency. I have to confess, I have not figured that out yet. I have not figured that out. It is one of my biggest challenges as a leader. It is the thing that I have got to do better at than I've done. There have been, if you talk to Amy, she'll tell you too. There have been in 4.5 years, there've probably been 3 times, and where I'm not kidding, Bruno. She actually had to walk up to me. This is in the middle of, this is while we're all still on campus and stuff, where she could tell that I was just done. Like I had nothing. I had nothing left in the tank, or I'm getting ready to go to a meeting or something. And she can just tell that I'm spent. And she is actually, I'm not kidding. And hopefully Amy won't mind me telling you this. There have been 3 different occasions that I can remember where she's come up to me and said, "Hey, Rick, you got to get out of here. Like you got to get out of here right now." And that is not me bragging about, oh gosh, I'm working so hard. I'm thinking about, no, that is me telling you that I have failed. Because it should never get to that place, ever. Thank goodness that I have someone like Amy who is not going to sugarcoat it for me and tell me when I need to, step away. But I think at that point, I have already failed because it's too late. So, Bruno, this is going to be a hugely dissatisfying answer to your question, but I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do everything we can to carve out the things that you need to do to keep yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually healthy. And too much of any one thing, certainly too much of any one thing in work is problematic. So I am, you know what, I'm pledging to you right now, Bruno, and to everyone else on this, in this meeting, I'm gonna strive to do a better job of that personally for me, so that I can be a better leader when I'm on, because when you get to the point where someone is tapping you on the shoulder telling you you need to go home, imagine if she hadn't done that those 3 times and I had just walked into another meeting like a zombie. Then 1, I'm not representing the college well. 2, I'm probably about to make some bad decisions, right? Because I'm not in the right frame of mind. And then 3, someone's going to get hurt from that. So yeah, my answer to you, Bruno, is please don't be me on that. Please be better than me, and find ways to take control of your time and take control of your schedule. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, so I have a question for you, Dr. Bailey. We can see clearly in Northern and also in other successful institutions that there are usually multiple leaders within the organization, making everything happen. And one of the struggles that I'm having as I start my business is, how do you develop leaders? I was even talking about this with Mr. Apieros yesterday, and I would like to get a little bit of input in this.
Great question. Great question. So I'm probably going to share with you more than I should. So I also think, and this is also where I'm spoiled because of my past and what I did. In the military, there is a built-in mentorship. It's just built in, and Dr. Apiarius has heard me talk about this before. We are all trained in the service that the people who are around you, especially the people who are directly under your charge, you are constantly working with them to train them and educate them about how to do your job, so that at some point they matriculate up into your leadership position, right? So your company, Victor, the idea would be that there is a one person or a group of people that at some point you are going to hand this over to them. Now, in higher education, it's a little tricky because there are a lot of people who are also very worried about job security, right? So there is an inherent logical disconnect in some ways between job security and mentorship. So what I did, I mean, the very first day that I got to Northern, I started looking around and saying, okay, you know what, who here wants to be a college president? Like that was my mindset. And I will tell you, there are a few people who I've talked to who I think are genuinely interested and might do it. There are other people who I think are kind of set up for it, who absolutely don't want to do it, absolutely refuse to do it, and have said, boss, I don't want that job. So stop training me on how to do your job. But I do think even if you take the job piece out of it, and this is something I've challenged us as an institution to do, I think mentorship should be a part of everyone's job description, everyone. And whether it means training them into your job or not, that we can debate that. But I would say that mentorship in how to communicate better, how to do critical thinking, and some of the things, actually all the things that you've listed as the topics of your speaker series, those are all things that leaders should be doing at all levels with everyone around them, and make it part of the day-to-day business. I will tell you that we, one, not all of us do it as much as we should, and two, even when we do it, we don't do it evenly. You know, there are peaks and valleys, or we get absorbed with something else. And I don't think we do it enough. I think if we can build that in somehow more into the culture of the organization, then I think those organizations generally do better. So if you can build that into the company that you're that you have, and make mentorship a part of the culture of the organization, I think that organization will shine.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm next, right?
Yes, and by the way, while you're there, David, I want to say, Eva, it is a wonderful honor to have you here. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Jsi odhlášená, můžeš něco říct? Můžeš něco říct?
Sorry, happy to joining. Thank you.
Happy to have you. Happy to have
Awesome,
you.
Ava. We're so happy. Come become a student too. I'm going to recruit you.
Yes.
Student family, please come here.
It's so great, you know, at least 1 hour to be younger.
Oh, no, you are. Believe me. No, it's great. And we're really, really honored to have you with us, Ava. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll leave the place for David. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Dr. Bailey for an amazing speech. It is inspirational for all of us. And my question for you is kind of personal. What is the difference between your position in the military or in the Air Force, and your position as a leader here in our college and in our community. What is the difference in the decision-making process? Which position is maybe more challenging, more difficult? Because I can see that one is maybe more simple, but the stakes are higher, and the other one is more political and more, it's tougher to make those decisions. So I would like to see your
Yeah, the way you asked the question, David, is exactly right. Like, I could not agree more. The way you just phrased it is better than I could have articulated it. I think in the military, there is a built-in, very rigid structure that makes decision-making and the respect for those decisions easier, because it's already built into the right. Mentorship is easier because it's built into the model. When I about 3 years ago, hopefully he won't mind me sharing this story. About 3 years ago, there was the chancellor at the University of Texas is a guy named Bill McRaven. He was a retired 4-star admiral who ran Special Operations Command, planned and led the raid on Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. I mean, you name it. This guy's amazing military leader, and then retired and went to the University of Texas to be the chancellor. And he was in Albuquerque one night and invited me to a cocktail event, and I didn't even know. I mean, I obviously I didn't know him at all, and so I went down there and was just honored to meet this guy. And we ended up having this, 5-minute one-on-one kind of conversation, just the two of us. And we were talking about your question, right? What's the difference between, being a military leader and being a leader in higher ed? And he said to me, and he said this publicly, that no matter how challenging his military career was, leading a university was the hardest thing he'd ever done, most complex thing he'd ever done. And this is the guy who planned the raid on bin Laden. So that kind of shows you kind of how nutty it is. And I agree with that. I think, and that's why I think I've grown as a leader in these last several years. I've learned a lot because as opposed to a military organization where there's a very kind of set structure, at the college, there are several different constituencies. So, and this leads to that servant leadership. I work for the students, I work for the faculty, I work for the staff, I work for community members, I work for the governor, I work for, there is an entire list of constituencies, all of whom, this is not going to be a shocker, all of whom have goals, desires, positions that don't always exactly line up with each other, right? That's what makes, I think, decision-making at the college so much more complex, because there are very different constituencies with different motivations, and all of those are occurring at the same time. So in that sense, there's a level of complexity to decision-making here that I've never experienced before. The last thing you said was super important though, and that was you mentioned the kind of the gravity of the decision-making. There were definitely decisions that I made in the military where lives were on the line, like in the moment, lives were on the line. And so that presents a whole different level of stress and anxiety, and that's where you have to rely all those kind of core principles and those common, that's where that has to be your focus now, because you have to rely on those in the moment. And without COVID, before COVID, I would have said that wasn't an issue. And yet over the last 11 months, that has been an issue where we have made decisions at the college that I do think it can be life or death decisions, because we're trying to keep everyone safe. And so that has, I think in some ways the military helped prepare me for that kind of emergency type decision making. And I think in any organization, there's always going to be the possibility of something that comes. That look at what's happening in Texas right now, and there are always going to be crises that the organization has to maneuver through and navigate through. And that's where I think if you come back to to your North Star and the principles that guide you in times that aren't times of crisis. They'll guide you through the crisis too.
Thank you very much. So we can say that this COVID experience kind of brought both your leadership positions closer together in the overall experience.
I think that's a really good way to put it, David. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have another question. I know we're over time, but yeah, Delmiria Martinez, do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Well, actually, I just wanted to say thank you very much to Dr. Bailey. And I do believe when he speaks that he is heart-centered, because I was actually an employee right when he started. And unfortunately, I was grant funded and couldn't find another job within the college. So I left, but even as an ex-employee, he made the time to speak with me. And I knew that he was a very busy man. So I really appreciate that. And I do believe when he says he's heart-centered, I totally believe that.
Thank you.
So thank you again. Thank you again, Dr. Bailey.
Thank you, Delmario. I know you are in the same boat. I can say the same about you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any more questions? All righty. Oh,
This has been
someone gonna say
wonderful.
something?
Thank
Go
you
ahead.
so much, Evelyn, and thank you to the Student Senate. I really loved it. It was wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to spread your wisdom with us, Dr. Bailey. And I know I speak on behalf of everyone when I say that we are so very blessed to have you as a leader. I know I don't know too many college presidents, but I know that not many, if not, I don't know, not many like teach courses and are, you know, on this level with students and are able to be mentors to students. So thank you. We are super blessed.
Thank you.
And so I guess at this time, I just want to put a link on the chat box. This link will take you all to a feedback survey. Give me one quick second. Okay, there you go. It will take you to a feedback survey. Please fill it out. Once you do, you will be in the running for a $50 Amazon gift card. I love Amazon. And also we want to know, we want to know, you know, how can we improve? What did you like? What did you learn about this event? What would you like to see in the future? And that will help us, you know, provide better events for you all. And thank you all for your presence. And we really look forward to having you all join us in our next event. Please go like the NNMC Student Senate Instagram, where we will be sharing more information about future events, about resources, inspirational quotes, all of that. And I will put that in the chat as well. And yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr. Bailey, for presenting. Thank you for everyone who took part in planning this, Dr. Juarez, Sarah McCormick, Student Senate, the communications team, everyone that I can't think of at the moment. We really appreciate you and thank you. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, Madam President. Bye, everybody.
everyone.
Have a great one.
Everyone, bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you all. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Bailey.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Madam
guys-
President, Dr.
You guys
Abiadi.
did a great job. You guys did a great job.
Yay, go
Very-
team. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Same.
Dr. Abiadius and I had ideas that were like sort of stemming from what Dr. Bailey was saying. So we have some ideas for the next one. Thanks, everyone. Bye,
Thank you,
Eva.
everyone.
Bye,
Good job
David. Thanks,
facilitating.
guys.
Nice to meet you, Ava. David, make sure
Bye,
you tell David, make sure you tell Ava you have an incredible son. He's a wonderful guy, and we're so blessed to have him here. So thank you for sharing him with us.
That is so true.
I thank you that you took care of him. I'm very glad, and I hope he can join you back in US when this crazy situation gets over.
Agreed. That's our dream as well. Because
Yeah,
he's.
but we're also going to visit, just so you
That's
know.
right. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Come over as
Bye.
well, you know,
Bye,
when it's
Sarah.
possible.
Bye, Evelyn. Bye, David.
Thanks, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Bye,
Bye.
John.
Evelyn, do you want us, the members of the Senate, to take the survey just for informational purposes, or we shouldn't?
I think you could. I think it'd be a good idea if you have thoughts and ideas on how we can improve it. If you think everything was good, I mean, obviously there are always things that we can improve on. So go ahead and fill it out, and it'll just be a way of keeping it all in one concise
Okay.
place.
Okay.
Thank you, David. We'll see you. Bye.
Okay. Have a good one. Bye-bye.